Hello and welcome to the Courageous Influence Talk Show, where we have courageous conversations that help build people of courageous influence. I'm your host, Alex Cuttiford, and I'm joined by my mate and pastor, Caleb Dwyer.
G'day.
How are you, mate?
Good.
Good.
I am fine. How are you?
Awesome. I'm very good. You're just fine, are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah, that's good. Mate, we've been having a lot of fun this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say I love hanging out with you and the producer?
A touche. Does touche mean me too? I don't know.
I don't know.
That is one of those words I've never fully
touche.
understood when to use it or not. Does it mean, you got me, good zinger?
Yeah.
Or does it mean, back
touche.
at ya?
Yeah, no, I think it means the first one.
Good
It's
zinger.
like, touche. Well, not purely zingers, but it's like, touche, like,
We should never teach English.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, this is not an English lesson this morning. Don't worry if that's what you're thinking is about to happen.
Welcome to Bogan 101.
Yeah, that's about right. Mate, we've got an awesome show lined up this morning.
Looking forward to it.
I've got some great bombshells to drop.
Whoa!
But I feel as though we have a shared fail this morning.
A shared fail?
Yeah, I feel as though we should talk about bad eating habits because so you started to allude to the fact that you've been struggling, and I felt, all right, let's make this into the talk show because I'm right there with you. And I was even listening to on the news the other day, they were talking about there's been a very big spike in bad eating habits with like salty foods and stuff over coronavirus.
Yeah, really?
And so we're not alone. All of Australia is in this struggle with us.
The whole
Right?
world.
So hopefully everyone can identify with us. Mate, what's going on with your
Well, the
eating
biggest
habits?
thing I've noticed is we eat pretty healthy from breakfast to dinner.
And then it all goes
And
out
then
the
it all goes downhill. And for a long time, I've been a take it or leave it when it comes to dessert. But I finished dinner, and 10 minutes later, I'm so hungry.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. And then I'm looking in the mirror going, mate, it's probably time you stopped having dessert. Like, you used to be able to eat what you wanted, and it just,
Yeah.
I could not put weight on. Like, when I was a young fella, I used to hate being so skinny. And people would say to you, oh, gee, you're a bit skinny, or hey, sticks and stuff like that. And it was okay. But as a young boy, like, you wanted to be big, you wanted to be ripped. Like, it was deep down, you're like, And now, all of a sudden, you get towards your late 30s and it's just like, whoa.
They took it a sudden turn, and now all of a sudden you're wishing you're skinny.
But now, I don't know what it is, but I've noticed the last couple of nights, I was like, nah, I'm not going to have dessert.
Yeah.
And then dinner's finished.
And you're sitting there twiddling your fingers.
25 minutes later, I'm like, oh, gee, I'm hungry. We got any muffins? I might have a double choc muffin with ice cream. That'd be good.
So I'm sitting on the couch yesterday. So we've eaten dinner, and then we've had a few. Well, first I did the food shopping after work yesterday, and Melissa comes, gee, someone's a bit peckish. I've bought a packet of chips, a little packet of these sort of sugary apricot things, and a packet of biscuits.
You're meant to be
like
saving for a house,
chocolate-coated
mate.
biscuits. I was saying bargain.
You should never, ever shop when you're hungry, hey?
So anyway, I've bought all of that stuff. So we've eaten the grain wave chips on the way home because you need a little snack.
Well, they're
on
kind
the
of
way
healthy, aren't they?
home. Sorta. There's one element that makes it that's healthy, but then it's made up for by all the salt that they pile on to make up for it.
It's 5 grains, but it's deep fried.
Yeah. So we ate that on the way home, and then we nibbled on a few of the apricot things while we cooked dinner. Then we had a couple after dinner and a few bickies with a cup of tea. And then Melissa turns around and I'm on the couch eating toast. And she goes, are you serious? She goes, far out. And she's like, seriously, we got to get your eating under control. I was like, I'm eating the toast so I don't eat more chocolate biscuits.
That was a good move.
Exactly. I did lather it with butter, but
Did
Vegemite
you think it's just winter though? Like, I reckon you burn so much energy, and even like last night, I knocked off a little early because we had a couple of weeks leave, and we spent that time renovating the house, so no time to get firewood. And then last week it rained all week, so it had been 3 weeks.
The rain wears you down.
It does. So I went, all right, I've got to get home early and go smash some firewood. Did that. Man, I was hungry.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was because I don't think it was just that I was doing physical exercise because I said I've been renovating stuff, but you're cold.
Yeah.
I was reckon the wet and the cold.
Your body's putting more work into keeping you running. And
It's definitely not our lack of self-control.
definitely not. I'm sure there's some science that can back us up here.
It's the world's fault, not ours.
So if you're listening and you're a scientist, could you please just send through a little signed letter for our wives?
Yeah.
Just letting them know why we've been eating terribly lately. Yeah, no, I'm just starting to... I'm snowballing a bit because the thing about bad food is the more you eat, the more you crave it, and the less satisfying it becomes in small doses.
Yeah,
it's a pandemic.
Ooh, but
another sort.
Yeah, but I have to say, like in general, as a household, we eat pretty healthy.
Yeah, we have healthy dinners.
Yeah,
we have very healthy dinners, which doesn't. It's now at the tipping point now, though, that doesn't compensate enough for the amount of bad food that I'm eating.
Yeah. Oh, well.
How about we move now from our fails, which, let's face it, the whole nation is in with us, to armchair anchors.
Armchair anchors. Well, this week I want to go bravely where we've never been before and enter the world of politics and pop culture.
Yep.
Potentially. And can I let me say this from the onset, we're actually not going to get heavily into politics. Right.
Of course not.
But the thing that
we're not fools.
we don't know enough.
Well, we are fools, but
the thing that I'm going to bring up that bothers me, it's not because ideologically this type of thing is my bent. Like personally, just my view, I'm up for small government. I just think that the bigger government, the bigger organisation gets, the less power the individual has. We do
the bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now that's just my worldview, right? But at the same time, I think we need a level of government for sure. I'm not an anarchist or anything like that.
Yeah.
But so many rules and so many regulations nowadays drives me up the wall. However, when we're in the middle of a pandemic, like, is it that hard to just go, you know what? Some really smart people are suggesting that wearing a mask could benefit the rest of society. And I live in Victoria, we don't, where this thing's going out of control, or I live in the States where it's out of control. And so the kindest thing I can do for everyone else is just listen to the advice and pop a mask on. Rather than making a big political statement about
simple, done.
I'm not listening to the man. How dare they try and control every aspect of my life? I'm not wearing the mask. Are you for real?
Did you see the Bunnings Carol video?
No.
That went viral.
Is it Karen?
Oh, Karen, sorry.
Yes.
Yep, Karen. That human rights have been violated from being... She's in their face telling them that they're violating her human rights, and they interviewed a human rights expert. You're saying there's more human rights related to the health of humanity than there is to being stopped from wearing a mask. Yeah. It's like, actually, you've been given the right to wear a mask. Mm-hmm. It's like...
And I think for us,
she's pretty fired up.
Lower middle-aged men are among the people who this affects the least, right? When we catch it, doesn't, occasionally people get really sick, but more often than not, with good treatment in a Western nation, we're going to be okay. But don't we have just a sense of care and duty for other people to go, you know what, if this can just make a few people, it's not that big of a deal. I might not look brilliant in a mask, but it's not like I look worse. They're just covering up part of my face. Honestly.
It might even do you a favour, depending.
Right. Actually, I saw this meme, and it was like the real problems with the pandemic, and it was this mask and these beautiful eyes, and then they pulled it down and they had a big moustache.
Is that why you grow a beard, Caleb?
Yeah, right. I'm doing my bit for society.
I saw another video of someone that had put 2 masks on, and so then they could open it up to eat, and it looks like a big beak. They look like a bird.
Genius. Yeah. Although I have to admit, because of my complete disdain for feet and socks,
you want them to be made mandatory for feet as well.
No, I'm drawing the line when it comes to making your own mask out of a sock.
No.
It's been all over Facebook.
No.
Yes, how to make a mask out of a sock. I'm like, really?
Surely there's other things lying around first.
There's a lot of other things I would use before it.
So many things.
Sock. But it just gets me. I just look at it and go, what? Especially because, I probably lean a little bit more that way of freedom, less rules. We don't need to, don't over-govern the world. Seriously, we're not good at it. So
Yeah.
let people make their own choices and deal with the consequences to a degree.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I come from. But then I just look at this and go, where have you got to where common sense and just a simple little gesture of putting a mask on to care for your fellow man, whether it helps them or not, you're at least doing your bit, is somehow an affront to your political worldview that you just got to get angry and rage against some poor joker who's just down at Bunnings trying to do their job and sell you a spatula and you're going off. I just think, are you for real? Like, just settle down.
All right,
before we move on, you told me the best one line I've heard about not wearing a mask.
Which won't be shared.
Okay.
Now we're moving on before you get too fired up and in a spiral. But I'll pick back up on the bureaucracy conversation because I have got a doozy.
A doozy.
An absolute doozy.
What?
So at work at the moment, I am tasked with my job is to help 15 to 19-year-olds get into employment or further education. So riddle me this, all right? Are you ready for bureaucracy at its finest? Okay, so you're allowed to do the white card course, which allows you to get onto work sites and stuff like that. You're allowed to do that from 14. When you're 14, you're allowed to do that course. Now, to sign up for the course, you need photo ID. Now, if you're 15, you haven't got your car license yet. You can't get a proof of age card until you're 16.
Oh.
So, if you are still at school, you're able to get something signed by the school. But if they're not at school, they have just fallen into what I've discovered is the biggest black hole in bureaucracy that I have ever seen.
They're not allowed to get proof of age. They haven't got a license. They haven't got a school ID.
So I have been back and forth with, so there's the provider of the white card course, but they, I guess, are governed by SafeWork. So I've called SafeWork. I'm explaining it to them. The first person that I spoke to was answering my questions before I finished. And then once she finally heard what my question was, she goes, well, what are you going to use for photo ID then? I said, that's what I'm calling about.
That's my question.
And then she was like, I'm going to have to get back to you. I'll email it up the line basically and they'll get in touch. And I was like, oh no, it's going to get lost in the system. I've gone back to the provider and I'm talking with them about it and it's sort of, oh, what about this, what about that? And then realizing, yeah. So then I've gone back to them and the first person from Safe Work that I spoke to was saying like, oh, look, like we don't really even need the photo ID. It's more so for the high risk course that you need it more so. It's not really that pivotal for us. It just depends on the provider. Talking to the provider, look, we're just following the guidelines set for us by Safe Work.
Oh, wow.
So back and forth. Eventually, after yesterday having been on hold on and off for an hour, at the end of the day, after I spent the whole day on this because I was like, that's it, I'm going to crack this. I'm going to find a way.
I'm going to break the system.
Yeah, I'm taking the system on. I can't wait to find a way through this. It's going to be a great day. And then finally got a lead to another email that I can go through to try and get an exemption.
Right.
But it's not guaranteed. So that's my job today is I'm going to try and lobby for an exemption of the photo ID.
Well,
so that these guys can go get their white card.
A couple of questions. Like, isn't the most fundamental ID certificate your birth certificate?
So they need the birth certificate as well, where it's fallen, because you need your 100 points of ID. So
What about a passport?
But none of them have got their passport, and that would be an even bigger task trying to help them get that all
It could
together.
be like $400 or $500 to get a passport.
Yeah, and so that's one of the other things. If we went the route for some of them, they might still be enrolled at school, even though they're not attending. And so we thought, maybe we can still get something from the school because they're still on the books technically. The issue with that then is if they're at school, they're not eligible for the funding that makes it free. So even if we did go that route,
they turn up the school ID.
Then it's like $220 to do the white card.
Could you guys, as an organisation, not start to issue your, I don't know, what do you call them? They're not students, your apprentices or whatever.
Yeah.
With photo IDs.
Well, I have
a camera.
I've raised it in a conversation of whether we could try and become a provider of the white card.
Oh yeah.
But even then, if we still had, we would have to work our way around the.
Yeah, but why?
What it comes down to is one little box at the bottom of this page, and you have to tick that you've had these things cited, and one of them says photo ID. Even though I was like highlighting parts of like the legislation that's on the front and saying all it says is provide a photo. Doesn't say photo ID. And then on another one it says you need to provide 100 points of ID. These are some of the things that you can do. So I'm like highlighting this and sending it back through, and they're saying, yeah, but then there's
what about
crack it?
I don't know if this works. Could you take a photograph of yourself to a JP and get them to sign it as a genuine photo?
That's what I was discussing that with Melissa yesterday, and was like, well, that's what I'm just trying to ask them. Like, tell me what we can do.
That's ridiculous. Anyway, that's exactly my point. Like,
so
we're not good at this stuff.
That is the beauty of when they've fallen into a black hole of the system, and they keep saying, we don't have many, not many of our clients fall into this category. I was like, yeah, that's because it's impossible for them to get in.
And none of your clients are under the age of 16, are they?
Oh, gee, crazy.
So can you get a photo card, or do you have to have a license for that?
Yeah, you have to be 16 to get it.
Wow.
So I'm going to lobby to the government.
You should become a
You should be allowed to get a photo ID when you turn 14, because the legal working age is 14, 8 months. So I reckon at 14 you should be allowed to get photo ID, because that's a very pivotal thing in terms of getting into your employment.
You should ring the ABC radio.
Well, I had a mate come in yesterday to work who was applying for a job, and then he came and we had a chat. We got talking about it, and we've decided we're going to go to 60 minutes.
60. Go to the top.
So we're going to take on this.
Come on.
Anyway, moving on from bureaucracy. I've been loving telling this story because it's just it's so bewildering that it's satisfying to talk about. But one quick one, and last week the conversation came up of the Emu War, and that the emus won. Do you remember that? With the producer?
Yes.
And we were like, what is going on? I looked it up. In 1932, the emus were destroying the crops of a lot of the Australian. They were a part of I think they were part of the army, whichever section in Western Australia. And to keep them working in between things, they set them up doing crops a bit further out in the bush, and they were getting raided by emus. And at one point it was up to like 20,000 emus were out in this area and just raiding all of their crops. And instead of going to the Minister of Agriculture, they went to the Minister of Defence. And he went, all right. Good. And he went, we'll sort this out. He supplied them with one machine gun and 10,000 bullets. And they were tasked with clearing the emus, and they failed miserably.
Did they really? The emus won.
The emus worked out the distance of the machine gun.
Wow.
And just sat just out of range of it.
Yes.
And then when they realised how quick they were, their next idea was, let's put it on the back of a car and chase after them, which in the video goes, which didn't work very successfully because they spent most of their time just trying to hold on.
Your accuracy is totally blown in a moving vehicle.
What year was this?
1932.
Wow, haven't times changed? Can you imagine how many permits you'd have to go through to even be
Yeah,
like
so eventually they declared that they ran out of bullets and had made no dent in the emu population, and they decided to chalk that up to a fail and didn't try it again.
Oh, there's so many things about that story.
And so look it up on YouTube.
Oh, well.
Brilliant.
That is
Brilliant. Now we'll quickly brush past sports in the Anchor Armchair, just to let everyone know the Eagles have gone from outside the top 8 to flag favourites over the weekend.
Yeah.
Unbelievable performance.
Unbelievable.
Hopefully they can maintain that. That was pretty clinical. That was just...
They dismantled.
That was a near perfect game of football. Mm-hmm. Oh, all the guns were firing. Mm-hmm. Young and old. Kennedy kicking 7. Oh. Allen kicking 3.
Wouldn't it be good
and
to see
holding his own against Grundy in the ruck?
He did. Yeah, he did pretty well, actually. But wouldn't it be good to see Big Man get the Coleman?
That would be very good. It'll here's another here's my question without notice. Mm-hmm. Why is it
Yes, Alex.
Why is it that most commentators are former tall forwards? Rewalt, Brown, Alistair Lynch, Rewalt, Favola, Nathan Brown, not a key forward, but a forward. Richo. They're all key forwards. This is why is that?
Gary Lyon.
He's on the other talk show. Shaved head, played for Hawthorn. Dunstall.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of them. They're overrepresented with all the positions. You're right. I wonder if backmen aren't smart enough to be commentators.
Well, I was thinking it was the other way around.
Well, they're not smart enough to go get another job.
No, the defenders become coaches. The forwards, the showboaters, all they do is sit around and talk.
Yeah, you're probably right, actually.
They like being out the front. They're the showboaters. They're the goal kickers.
It's the same
and
way.
And then
in
the
soccer.
coaches take the unsung glory. All they get is pelted for anything they do.
You're right.
Like the most famous players would probably be the ones who actually tick over numbers on the scoreboard, who kick goals and behinds and that. Like in soccer, you've got Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, all of those forward goal-scoring players are the ones who are
getting all the
most
glory.
known about, and then thus, maybe they like the attention, they get it for so long. If they didn't have it, if they didn't remain in the limelight, who would they be really?
Exactly. So
it's true.
Yep. So that's just an interesting thing that I
never noticed that before.
Yeah. All right, mate. Let's move on to our life lessons.
I get to ask you a question without notice today.
Oh, okay. Hit me up.
It's a very important one. What did the chicken say to the duck who was about to cross the road?
What?
Don't do it. They'll be talking about it forever.
That was a joke without notice.
It was a joke in the format of a question.
Yeah. Touché.
Did you hear about the antennas that got married?
No.
The wedding was a bit so-so, but the reception rocked.
Gee, dad jokes without notice.
What did you want to do next?
Life lessons.
Oh, life
Clearly
lessons.
you're a dad, so you must have some life lessons for us.
If you're not hungry for God, you're probably full of yourself.
Ooh.
Drop the mic.
And we both know that we're both full. Yeah, okay.
No, very true.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've realised is that the minute I stop allowing God to recreate me in his image, I start wanting to recreate God in my image. So it's not a neutral thing, hey?
Yeah.
And so it's just something that I watch in my own life. I know that I will make better decisions. I know that I will be happier, stronger, healthier, more of the fruit of the Spirit, whilst ever I'm maintaining a decent hunger after God. Not just the things of God, not just the blessing of God, but actually just to know Him.
Yeah.
And be known by Him. And if
definitely.
I cultivate that, the other stuff flows out of it.
Yeah. How do you best cultivate that hunger or pursue that hunger when you feel it diminishing?
The same as I would any other relationship. So time, reading the Word, discovering. I find when you discover, for me, just the way I'm wired, reading the Word and discovering something new about God and His character and who He is, discovering something, a new depth of the power of the cross. These things just create such a joy. It's like, when you're in a relationship with someone and you discover something great about their nature or their character, you actually want to be around them more, you enjoy them more.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do. And the other thing would be my time of prayer or meditation or podcasting, again, usually a great teacher, and being outdoors, walking in the bush somewhere and just spending time where I can pray, not stressed, and it's not an agendaed prayer. And just begin to intentionally cultivate that in my life. I mean, we've got to be real. Like, there are times when you just go, oh, wow, if I'm really honest, I've just got so flat out with life, or maybe you just get knock after knock after knock and you're like, I'm just a bit flat and I just haven't really let into God the way I need to. I just need to prioritize that relationship again.
Yeah.
And it's just something I want to monitor. I don't want to get to the point where I'm more interested in what I'm doing for God than I am in knowing God.
Yeah.
Or even, I don't even want to get to the point, like, one of my big things you would know I talk a lot about is having a hunger for the fruit of the Spirit in my life, not just the gifts of the Spirit. And I'm all for the gifts of the Spirit, but, I think as Christians, the thing that distinguishes our life is the fruit of the Spirit. Like Jesus even said, the way they love each other, how you know they're my disciples. And it's those things that come about by the Spirit of God in our life, transforming us. It makes you a better husband. It makes you a better friend. And so life works better. It enables you to deal with the disappointments of life better when you got lots, the fruit of the Spirit really working in your world. And so that's something I'm really passionate about. But I don't even want to get to the point where I want more of that in my life than just knowing God. Like, I reckon that has to always remain the number one, to know God and be known by God, to walk with Him, to be a friend of God, to be a child of God. And if I keep that central, everything else sort of flows out of that. And when I notice that dwindling, or if I'm becoming more obsessed with what I'm doing, because you become less fruitful in your doing, you become frustrated, and that's when you can begin to strive and try and do things in your own flesh. I think one of the things that we all do at times, but one of the most disappointing things, particularly if it's prolonged, is when you see people even doing God stuff or church stuff or kingdom stuff, whatever word you want to put around it, but it's done out of this strivey, fleshy, achievey nature. It just burns people and chews people up. And I look at it and go, come on, that can't be what the kingdom of God's about. That's something I'd really value
it's
myself.
It's one that you're always got to be on top of. Like, I know for this year, like especially Melissa and I both going full time in jobs outside of the church for the first time, you definitely just have periods where you're just sort of going, oh man, like you're this sort of feeling. It's just I guess I can just see how easily and quickly you can just drift into this sort of coasting state where all hunger for God is just numbed.
Just dulled,
And it really, so it does come back to those. So one thing, and we've sort of, had conversations about it at different times, and recognizing, hey, the fact that we're discontent with that is a good thing.
Right.
So a feeling of discontentment there is actually good, because it's revealing to you what's at the core of you. Like, what the point of something where you're sort of going to say, no, that's not who I am. And this doesn't actually align with the core of my, the yearnings deep within me say, no, I do want to seek God. And so it's actually a good thing when you get to that point and you recognize, this isn't satisfying me. So that's a great revelation to realize, actually, I do have a heart for God.
Yep.
It's kind of like we were touching on last week with the whole failure thing, like doesn't mean that you have no faith. And it's like that. It's like when you get to that and you're feeling really discontent, the fact that you're feeling discontent is actually probably your faith calling you, saying this rhythm right now isn't fulfilling the yearnings of your faith. So, yeah, it's definitely one you got to keep track on. One of the things that often will help me is that when you're looking at the scriptures, rather than looking for something new, like dwelling on a moment that you've had in the past and sort of remembering that. It's sort of like, you know, like you're saying, you know, looking at similar to a relationship with anyone you'd have. You can't always just be looking to a new experience with your wife. You know, it's like, but what you can do is remember those seasons that you've come through, or those moments where they've come through, and it's the same with God. Like I remember a couple of weeks ago, I had something highlighted from years ago, and I was looking at that, and I was just remembering when I had first read that, and God had just spoken so powerfully to me through it, and I just sort of dwelled on that memory and I remember even the CEO of Young Life, back when I was doing youth ministry with them, he was talking about a really dry season that he went through. You know, he's in this leadership position and life is just coming at him, and he was talking about how he basically just had to live that whole year on past glory. And he was this, all that kept him going was this the past memories of what God had done in his life. And sometimes that's all you've got just to pull you through a season is this drawing upon what God has done for you in the past. And
nice. And I think those things like remembering the past, reading the Word, spending time with God, like they're basic things. And if they become as a discipline themselves, become the focus, you know, you lose the point. But I've even been thinking lately, like the discipline of gathering together. Clearly, during COVID, you know, we've been doing church online. We're now able to do small groups again, which is really important, and we're really encouraging in the life of the church. And one of the good things out of this is that there is that thing of let's not just be dependent on a church service. You know, really encouraging people to be self-feeders and to have their own hunger, and all of that's great and important. But one of the things that's not lost on me is that gathering together was actually like it's a God idea, and that it's like when you gather around other believers and you see their faith and their passion and their joy, it does stir you on each week, and that's actually an important part of keeping our faith life real and at the forefront. So I think that's knowing that we're in a season where we can't gather the whole body together at the moment, then we need to be extra intentional in our own personal world. Yeah. And not see that as, oh man, I must be such a bad Christian that going to church actually keeps me on track. I should be able to do it completely on my own. Well, okay, maybe, but then maybe also God just knows human nature, and that's why it was his idea that we do gather. Yeah, it's actually a great thing.
Yeah, definitely. Very good.
What about you, sir?
So mine isn't so much a statement, but a question that. So what I will preface this with is saying that I want to sort of address men right now. And I was listening to a podcast, which is what seems to be what starts off most of my statements. So I was listening to a podcast the other day. And he was talking about some of the fundamental questions men and women ask themselves, and it's sort of like about yourself. And one of the big questions that men will ask themselves is, have I got what it takes? And when he said that, I was just like, oh, well, that's really resonating with me. So something that I'm doing at the moment is studying building design so that I can hopefully get into drafting and stuff down the track. But I think and that really spoke to me of like it put words to something that I probably hadn't put words to yet, that I was feeling within myself of going, have I got what it takes to make this shift? You know, I've got to get through this study and then, you know, it's going to mean a complete career shift to do it. and there would be all kinds of different things that would have to come into place, especially if I want to go out on my own and start a business. Yeah, just the whole, I can just see just how big of a shift it would be.
Yes.
And I think, so, and at different times, especially like with my study, I'll find myself putting that to be the last thing that I get to before anything else.
Yeah, okay.
And I reckon it's because at different times I'm avoiding that question.
Have I got
what it takes? And you're not wanting to be confronted with that question. And I reckon that can be some of the reasons that I might procrastinate on my study at times.
If it all flops, it was because I didn't have that much time to put towards it, not because you don't have the ability to complete it.
Yeah, we give ourselves an excuse.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I just think I just hope that gives some language to some men out there that might just be, maybe they're feeling down on themselves, beating themselves up, feeling insecure, or maybe they're not wanting to, maybe they're feeling fear of stepping into something that they're passionate about, or feel a need that they could be filling or something like that. It might be worth asking yourself if this question is what's
Driving it,
or just ask yourself, have I got what it takes? That's something that we're often asking ourselves under the current, not necessarily in our conscious thoughts. And if we can recognize that that's what we're actually asking ourselves, then we can start to work out, okay, why am I asking that? What are my insecurities? Why do I think that I don't have what it takes?
Right. And if you don't in a certain area, get help.
Yeah.
I think, I don't think it's a question that's exclusive to men by any stretch, but I think I've never met a man who doesn't ask himself that question.
Yeah.
And life asks that of us, and it's important to us for our sense of identity and self.
Yeah.
And I think that a big part of fathering young boys is helping them believe in themselves. They have got what it takes, while still walking in humility.
And teaching young dads that they've got what it takes to raise kids. Because, and I reckon, like when you look at the different issues in society at the moment, especially with fatherless homes and stuff. Well, if young men haven't been taught how to answer that question, have I got what it takes?
Right.
Like, what's more terrifying than having a baby?
Yeah, and I think for a lot of us, what as blokes we tend to do, if deep down we're not sure that the answer to that question is yes, we won't necessarily confront that, but we find ways to isolate and cover it up and avoid, and then you end up with that old saying of a man-child, who hasn't grown up and taken responsibility and faced those big questions in the eye. So they're very important things to wrestle with.
So that was my thought for today.
Very good.
By trying anything, you risk having the answer being no.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you try for something, you risk finding out that no, you don't have what it takes. But by simply not trying, you don't actually find out whether you do.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You've guaranteed it by not trying. If you try, it's 50-50. That's the same with disappointment and worry. It's like I was just listening on a podcast the other day.
Of course you were.
And he was saying, if you worry, if you excessively worry about something, you've now experienced it twice if it comes true.
Yeah, wow.
Yes, I choose to experience disappointment once.
What a great thought.
So, you live with optimism. You try things, and if you fail, well, you've only failed once because you didn't fail beforehand in your worries and fears.
Wow. That's a really interesting way of
I choose to fail once. Okay, mate. So we've finished up Luke, and so we're going to be moving into John,
the book of John.
Luke is finished with. I just feel like it finishes with such anticipation for what's to come for the church.
Right,
and
intentionally so.
Yeah, leading into... We'll have to read Acts after we're done with the Gospels, I reckon.
Yeah, well, that is on the agenda before the end of the year. And that's... I even toy with the idea of doing Luke Acts because they are a 2-part series, but decided not to stick with the Gospels. Do it that way.
Yeah. So, do you want to give us a bit of an overview of John?
Yeah, a bit of an overview of John. Certainly wouldn't classify myself as an expert in John. It's a little bit more. It's different to the other Gospels. It's not one of the synoptic Gospels where Matthew, Mark, and Luke contain a lot of similar material. There's a lot that occurs in John that is different to the others. Some believe, therefore, thought it was written after.
Yeah.
Most people believe it was written by John, the son of Zebedee, one of the disciples and certainly one of the inner circle. He refers to himself within the book and is referred to not as John, but as the disciple whom Jesus loved. There is some thought with some of the more later revisionist work that maybe it's a different disciple, John, who lived in Jerusalem later and was known as John the Elder. I tend to feel it was John the son of Zebedee for a bunch of reasons that I won't get into now. Probably more important, though, than exactly who wrote it is why. And the big thing about it is that the readers would come to believe in Jesus as the Messiah, and through believing would come into eternal life. That's the whole point of John. And it's broken up into 4 parts. There's a prologue, and then there's 2 middle sections which take up the majority of it, and then there's an ending as well, or an epilogue. And in the prologue, the introduction, it's really cool. It begins with this, "In the beginning was the Word," which is a throwback to Genesis.
Yeah.
A reference to Genesis. And it's written in poetic, beautiful language. Amazing. In the beginning was the Word. There's a lot to be said about that. Words are distinct from a person, but they also embody the will and the mind of a person. And so the idea is that the Word was distinct from God the Father, but embodies everything that is the mind and the will of the Father. And then John goes on to just make it plain that the Word was with God and the Word was God. And then he makes it plain that the Word became flesh, which is Jesus. And then there's some incredible statements made in that introduction about Jesus. The Lamb of God, the Son of God, a Rabbi, the Son of Man, the Messiah, the King of Israel, and Jesus of Nazareth. 7 really big calls. And basically what he's setting up is this is who Jesus is. And then he goes into these 2 different sections. And the first section they call the Book of Signs. And it's a bunch of different signs or miracles that Jesus does. And at the end of each one, there's like this controversy or this confronting moment where you've got to decide, is Jesus who he says he is? And so, he begins by telling us these are the claims about Jesus. Now we're going to go through and I'm going to show you a bunch of signs. And the signs aren't just random things. A bunch of the signs tackle classic Jewish institutions. Yeah. And in each case claim that Jesus is the reality of that. So take, for example, the temple. And Jesus says to them, in 3 days I'll destroy this and rebuild it. And so the temple is a place where heaven and earth meet. And Jesus is actually saying, actually, I am the place where heaven and earth has met. Yeah. And so there's a lot going on beneath the surface with some good Bible study, and I'd encourage people to read a good commentary or something as you go through, because there's just so much depth. It's more than just the miracle and then the controversy. He's actually making some, especially to the Jewish leaders at that time, some really big claims. Other things that he does tackle the Jewish festivals and sacred days. And it's incredible. And at the end of each one of these moments, there's that decision or that controversy, and am I going to believe? And then it goes into the second half, which they call the Book of the Glory, which is really Jesus demonstrating his love for his disciples, his love for the Father, and that the Father will be glorified through him. And then he goes on to commission the disciples. And so right towards the end of that, Jesus is raised from the dead, and then there's this interaction with Thomas, the doubter. And again, it's this moment of, well, will you believe? And so right throughout the book of John, it's just bringing us back a time and time again to Jesus is the fulfillment of these ideas in Scripture in the Old Testament. Will you believe? And then Jesus died and risen from the dead. Now disciples, will you believe? And then there's the commissioning of right towards the end, the commissioning of Peter, and now will you believe and go and do what I've called you to do? And so really the whole thing of the book of John is displaying for us the amazing fullness of who Christ is, the loving Saviour, and challenging us to believe in him and respond to that and go and live accordance. And that's really the whole theme and pattern of John.
Nice. Well, hopefully that really helps set people up for this as we read through, and we encourage people to read along through the Gospel of John. Obviously, this taking our time through it again and just really allowing God to speak to us through these Gospels and really taking us deep into the life of Jesus. And I think it will be another great time of just building our faith and growing in that knowledge of God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in again today. We hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you again soon. Remember that you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the Generosity Church page. You can always go to the YouTube Generosity Church page, or you can follow us on Spotify at the Courageous Influence Talk Show. Bye for now.
All right.